I think it's fair for me to just say that I don't necessarily have advice, but all I can say is that this is where I'm at 22 years old, and these are some of the things that I reflect on, and these are some of the things that I think I can take from my years of experience. It's not everything, but it is some of the things that I think I'm also just like willing to like share, because obviously there are things that I think are just for me and that are just personal. Um, yeah. So the one thing that I jotted down when I was trying to come up with things to say is this, like, I'm at a point where I feel like I really want to like drop like some tendencies of mine. I feel like my early 20s is like a time for me to really understand that they are habits, tendencies of mine that are just not going to really help my future self or help me achieve some of the things that I imagine for myself that I'm working towards and whatnot. And I definitely think that one of them most probably has to be like this inability of mine of being able to like really like just okay, how can I explain this? Like underestimating myself and just not feeling free to like really like brag about myself and some of the things that I'm doing, like my interests, hobbies, um, and a lot of the like ideas I have, my opinions or like whatever it is, like things that I'm excited about, things that stimulate me, like I find myself just like really feeling this thing that just like makes me feel like, oh no, if I do that, I'm taking like up too much space that like maybe I'm like not supposed to, which is definitely also a systemic thing. A lot of women struggle with this even when they are older. And when I think about it, like it is something that I don't want to have to like do. I really want to work on being able to just like, get into a room and be able to like just brag about my personality. But it is something that I find incredibly different, and it definitely has to be because of like social conditioning and being conditioned to be a woman. Like we are not conditioned like socially conditioned to like be able to do that, but it is extremely important for anybody to be able to do that, like they're just things that like I'm doing, that I'm pursuing, that are just like really worth having to just like talk about and like just put out there because it's cool. Like it's so cool. Like I really do like think about like time, I think before turning 22, where I just had like thought that it was the noble thing to do, to like really, you know, not put myself out there and like step back and like not do too much of like, you know, expressing how I think I'm talented at this and I could, really get good at it, or like something like I really did reduce myself to something that was not necessary for me to do, basically. Yeah. So, journaling is a hobby that I started when I was in matric. I basically was at a point where I thought about journaling for a really long time. It is a hobby that when I thought about it, like I could start this and it would be really cool if I just did this for the rest of like my life. Like the idea of just like really taking account of like what goes on in my mind and having like proof of that and like keeping some journals, um, getting rid of some or something, like I don't know. I just really thought like it's such a cool habit to like have. And I think of the time I had also known people who journal, who, were talking to me about the benefits of journaling and how it can like increase your focus. And if you want to get good at like writing or just creativity in general, it's so good to like really tap into like that part of you. So I just started it, but I realized that as I was doing it, that there was generally a lot of things that I was really going through, like emotions, feelings, thoughts that were not necessarily comprehensive but still needed to be expressed. And I think that's one of the most important things I'd say, really comes from like journaling. It really does build this relationship with you, or like a relationship that you have with yourself. One, but secondly, I think it's also just very good to like really like release a lot of what we feel. Is not a lot of what we feel. Um, those emotions and those feelings or whatever's going on are not things that you can really like describe or define. And I think having to journal really allowed me to just like express that. So I'm very happy that I did that. I think it's actually one of the best decisions that I've made in my life, and the one way, or there's so many ways that I think it has influenced me to be the person that I am today. But I can definitely say that it allowed me to pretty much do what I've been doing on the podcast, which is just express things that even if they don't like sound like, they are like refined, it's still capable of being expressed. I think a lot of what I was conceptualizing for the podcast was a lot of, I think, what I had gained and what I had enjoyed and really like found to be very fruitful from having to like, keep a journal and write in that journal. Um, I do have to say though that it is a hobby that is just not, it's not easy to like keep up if you're like not used to it. I struggled in the beginning. I got better when I was reading The Artist's Way. I became a lot more consistent. But it does grow this like, again, like relationship that you have with yourself, your intuition. You become so good at just like really being able to like, check in with yourself. Even if you're not actually like journaling, you start to really like, become in tune with what is happening with you internally. And I cannot begin to explain like the benefits and the joys that come from, I think, being able to know that I have a hobby like that, or that I have this space that I've created where, I can allow like these emotions and these feelings to just exist in. And when I say that they don't have to make sense, baby, they do not have to make sense. Because also that's a big point that I'd say is essential to journaling as well. Yeah, I could go on about this forever. So a couple of years ago, my brother, on like a random day of the week, was having like the deepest like reflection or like conversation with me. I actually can't tell you what was happening because this was like back when I was, I think, like in grade 9. And I think he at the time had made a decision to sort of like really like make some changes in his life. And I think him and I were talking about that, and he said like sometimes taking a step back isn't always like a setback. It could also just be like, some steps forward actually. And that is a good sort of reflection of, I think, what was happening in his life. At that time, he had made a choice that to some people might seem as if like it was a step back, but he was actually relieved because I think it meant a lot of growth for him. And this is something that I think has really stuck with me. Like whenever I actually need to like remember this, like it comes back to me. And I really do like this because I think it really does go about really showing, I think, some of the decisions that even I make in life, or how I go about like my life. I know that I can just choose myself. Like I can choose like, I think, peace and growth in times where maybe like when I make the decision to somebody else, it doesn't look like I'm doing exactly that, or they don't see it, but I know the decision that I'm making for myself, and I know that it's going to be essentially like good for me. It has just made me like, I think, less ashamed. Like it has released the shame of, I think, something on insecurity in ways like, because I don't know, I mean, it happens in life where, you have to make the decision to just like stop doing something for you to be able to grow in a different aspect. And a lot of the times you are going to have like projections from other people and from the outside that are literally telling you like no, or like this is not going to work, or just like discouraging like thoughts will come up. But you know like life like life, I think, yeah, it is just been really nice to know that I can just come back to those words. So I don't know, shout out to him. Okay, so I'm gonna take time to really also talk about like some queerness. I don't know, my queerness, essentially. So I actually don't know what part of my queerness I genuinely want to talk about, but I felt like I should bring it forward. I should talk about it, because it is a part of me. It's part of who I am. It's a part of me that I discovered like a couple of years ago, that I was able to really accept and like understand like only a couple of years ago. I had like a queer friendship group at the time, and they taught me a lot. They made me realize a lot. They were able to make some ideas and ideologies like a lot less taboo to me, and it helped me really discover parts of myself. And honestly, I think the main thing that I really wanted to talk about in relation to queerness was how I think the idea and the concept, and not just queerness as it exists as a reality in my life, is one that is just extremely freeing. Um, I love the idea and the concepts of it because of how it exists in my life, one. But I think secondly, like, um, it's just a representation of, I think, how for me right now, being like queer, I can definitely say that like I don't have to exist within the structures that I felt like I had to exist in like before. And I think, yeah, it made me realize like I don't have to do that. There's certain aspects of myself that I don't really have to define for people anymore because of, me coming to an understanding of what queerness is and how it exists in my life. I don't really like to explain what my type is because it actually really doesn't exist. I find myself also just feeling very boxed at times by, being like a woman and having to live within whatever people define being a woman is. And sometimes I do, like I do identify as a woman, but at the same time, I can find that identity to be like quite, like boxing. I think it can sometimes mean that I can't exist outside of certain lines, and I like the fact that queerness, really does speak to the fact that I actually don't have to do that, and I can define what a woman means for myself and for the woman that I am without having to say that it looks like this, or it like I have to appear like this to necessarily be a woman. And if that means that I don't feel like one today or something, like bro, I just don't have to exist in like in those boundaries, and I think the binary of things. So yeah, yeah, it's a huge part of who I am. And I think I have to constantly remind myself of that as a person, because it's so hard. Not that it's hard, but I think it's just like so much also like goes on in my life. And I'm more than my queerness, of course. But I can be more than something, but that thing still mean like a lot to me and be a big part of who I am. Okay, I wanted to take time to really talk about creativity, and well, because it just means a lot to me to be creative. I think now, as a 22-year-old person, more than anything, because I'm not in art class anymore, and I'm not, I don't have an art teacher encouraging me to like um make art anymore and to create anymore. I now have to find that within myself. And last year I read The Artist's Way. That is also a very biggie for me. But I think the quote that I put up, like that I plan on putting up when I edit, is one that comes from The Artist's Way. And I think a huge thing that I took from there is that like my creative block that I experienced before reading The Artist's Way came from honestly like a deep-seated like negative self-esteem, or at least like a negative voice that I allowed to like live and like exist as this like logical voice that was actually not logical at all, or at least even even if it was logical, or if it seemed to be like it had more, I think, leverage of like reasoning or whatever, it took away from, I think, a lot from like my inner child. It took away from like my right to create and to do things. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I even started the podcast. I started it, I think, while I was reading it. Like I was on like the first, if not the second week of the course that the book like takes you like on and whatnot. um and so there's so much that I got to understand and like learn like while I was reading the book. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why I plan on pursuing this for a really long time. I think as someone who is not religious and someone who doesn't really like align themselves with any sort of like institution of like a certain belief, I, you know, right now I'm in a space where I could say that I believe everything happens for a reason, but I guess just not in the way where, you can't really like use that like all the time. Like I don't believe that I could say that in every single case, every single time, because that is like not the most, you know, I just mean like that in a more like serendipitous sort of like sense, like I experience like moments of synchronicities and they mean so much to me, like a lot, because it's this like huge sense of like things really aligning in my life, and they feel incredibly like special and essential, and it just makes me feel like damn, like everything happens for a reason, like because I just have a lot of moments where like maybe like I had like a bad day, a bad week, or something terrible happened, and then like life goes on, and then like something good happens. Then I realized that that good thing would have probably never happened or felt as good if the bad thing didn't happen before. Like if like moments like that where like things just start to make sense of why this and this had to happen, because when you align all of that, the experience that is so beautiful, that is so meaningful, that is happening right now is happening because of all of that, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I live for those sorts of moments. So I'm like a rebellious, curious sort of like person. I'm actually not kind of rebellious. Sometimes it feels like rebellion, but I'm a person who is very curious about things that are happening around me. And I can't just like I'm very bad at like letting things slide. Like just letting things like, just be, even though they're toxic or destructive. um like I can't, like, no, like why. And this is just like how I am when it comes to like um topics in like of like politics and societal topics. If we're looking at that, and if we're talking about that, like that's just how I am. I'm just extremely curious. And the thing is that I've lived a life to this point where I can say that a mind like my own, that is curious and like open-minded to all these different ideas, and is willing to question and oppose them, or oppose others, is not one that is very like welcome in certain spaces, especially if you look like me. So Yeah, it's not easy to go about navigating that as someone who is a black woman, but it is something that I love. It's like ugh, it's so like it gives me so much energy, and it's like so like fiery, like it just gives me another reason to live, honestly, because I feel like my heart is, like being set on fire in moments where I just get angry because of like the actual like problematic things that are happening around us, like in our society. And it's just like, why is this happening? And I found myself like, especially like last year, like really just like not agreeing with like a history teacher, a history lecturer that I had. And I don't know, it just made life like worth living. It just made me feel good, and like I just felt like I had like reason and purpose to like why I'm here. And I really do feel for people that are like me, who have one learned to like like be silenced by, the people and the figures in their lives that have said that that doesn't matter, that have basically told them or have sent a message to them and to that part of themselves that it's not worth existing. That part of you is essential. It's like it's this soldier, it's this activist, like that part of me, like when I, get that, is like an activist part of myself. Like I should never stop having to like, do that. And it really does, it like it comes from not a sense of like wanting to always oppose, but it comes from a sense of, being an empath and being sensitive, which are extremely powerful traits. But I think another thing that is like really essential is like, my the way that I think. I think about things. I, absorb information. I love to learn. I love to understand. I love to think about these complexities of like society, like sociology, like kind of like I'm that kind of person, and I love it. But then my processing is then like comes through sometimes as a form of, like opposing, ideas that maybe don't align with how I feel, or like with my, my empathy. If not that, I will process it in, many other ways. It's not always, me trying to oppose someone that doesn't agree with me. Um, but it's a part of me that I'm learning that is not disruptive. It is necessary. Like I have to actually remind myself of that, and really do, I think understand that it's a part of who I am, and I think it's incredibly valuable. So I got into affirmations um sometime last year, I'd say. Like I started journaling, which was like a very like huge milestone for like my own mental health and my own self. But then I think another thing that I realized that I needed, like I said, because journaling like grows your intuition, I started to feel and sense that I think I'm gonna need to affirm myself. I just noticed that like there were just times in my life where I'd forget who I am, forget my worth, like, because it's just so easy. It's so easy to like forget, these beautiful amazing things about yourself, and these characteristics that you have, the power that you have, how amazing you are, and all that stuff. Like it's so easy to forget because of how many things we are, demanded to really do, and like the spaces that we have to occupy, responsibilities that we have, interactions that we have with people that are not in like the same places that we're in, that are not even trying to like, you know, a lot, right? So it's very easy, I think, for me to forget some of those things and to go down a really terrible like spiral of like just negative emotions and thoughts and whatnot. And I think one of the ways that I've been able to really help myself is through affirmations. I've even gone about like even affirming myself enough to even start to sense like how I can change the affirmation to really like leave an impact in my life that is like necessary. So I'd even like make some of like my own. Like I think there's so much power into affirming yourself, like through words, writing out your affirmations, writing them out for you to find them like randomly, like making like a whole like deck of them if you want to. Like I did that last year, and then I lost the deck because I moved out of Reds and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, I still, write them down in the mornings, and I think even just like thinking about a certain affirmation like weekly, and like thinking about like what that actually means in my life, and like I do that, and I just find it to be very essential. Yeah. Yeah, I was born a feminist. I don't really remember a time in my life where I did not think like a feminist, or I did not, think that there should be equality across like everyone. Um, when I think about like my first feminist thought, because I don't know if I was like asked this or if I like saw it like online. I was in grade one, and I remember, I'm not too sure if I was the girl that did this, but I'm pretty sure that there was a girl in my grade one class who, I don't know what conversation was happening, but I know we used to yap with our grade one teacher. Um, she picked up her hand and she was like, "Oh yeah, like my mom has like, she does like everything. She irons, she cooks, she cleans, she, makes like, I don't know, but she basically like does everything at home, takes care of them while their father sits on the couch and like is relaxing and doesn't help their mother at all." And I remember in that moment thinking to myself, like, yeah, and that's unfair. And I remember picking up my hand and being like, yeah, and it's like so unfair. Yeah, yeah. I just felt like I had to say that because I think a lot of people have this perception that like I have just been like, I don't know, what's the word? It's not inducted. There's a word for this, but that I have been like somehow like influenced to, think like a feminist or to like be a feminist, when really that all comes from like a deep seated like part of me, I had always just seen the injustice, and I think it's like maybe it's like my moon in Libra. I have no idea, and I've just always wanted to see justice across everyone, and I've never really thought like this like difference of like genders means that you have to go about the world differently. Like, come on, we're all human. Like, let's just like get out of that. Like, seriously. So yeah, I was born a feminist. I really like, I generally don't remember a time where I've never had like feminist feelings and thoughts and expressions. I don't remember. I don't. And that has to be like the first sort of like feminist expression that I've had. Yeah, I'm very appreciative of this video and having to do this video, because it has allowed me to just like really think about myself and my life and just like where I'm at. It has made me, I think, realize that more than anything, I think the small and mundane things of my life have contributed to who I am more than anything, honestly. I think it's like the state of like my mental that I'm in like right now, where I'm realizing that the small mundane things carry you. They really, really do. They carry so much of your life, and they mean so much more. It's just that like we take them for granted because we do every day, or like they don't require that much energy, or they're just not the main big moments of your life. And the truth is that like these big moments, realizations, times of growth, and coming of age have meant so much to me and are really like these milestones in my life that have made me who I am. But so are like the small moments where I'm like, at home just relaxing and like, just having nothing to really worry about because I'm safe and I'm secure, or like listening to music that I like has shaped who I am. Inside jokes with my sister, lectures from my mom, like all these like really small and mundane like things that I've, taken for granted because I'm a human being and I do that like without like a doubt, like I do that, have honestly shaped who I am, And I think I'm at that point at my life as well where I'm realizing that I kind of don't want to do that anymore. Like I kind of also just want to, give those moments so much more credit. And I think really allow myself to be in mundane moments a lot more. Yeah.